Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 88 of Humanity Rising. Virtually every day since the 22nd of May, Ubiquity University and upwards of 400 partnering organizations have been convening a daily opportunity for people around the world to come together and share their experiences of what it's like going through this extraordinary pandemic that has put the world essentially in lockdown and catalyzed a new social norm, social distancing. And all of us, to some degree or other, have been involved in a single global human experience. And that has put us all in the same conversation at a moment when scientists all over the world are warning us that we are running out of time to set things aright and put humanity in a new alignment with itself and with nature, or else forfeit the world as we know that. We all know that this is true. And so one of the purposes of Humanity Rising, in addition to just allowing us to share what it's like going through this extraordinary event, is to allow us the opportunity to take counsel together. What are the new mindsets, the new stories that we need to embrace that can inspire humanity to move forward? What are the solutions that we can implement on the ground in our local areas, in our regions, in our countries that could actually make a difference? And how can we develop a strategic effectiveness of working together, proactively, radically collaborating, such that we can make the world more healthy, more abundant, more in alignment with natural systems and constraints? We're very fortunate today to have Karen Buckley back with us. She's one of the represents one of the partnering organizations, Humanity Rising. And she offered about a month ago to convene a session of women leaders. And that was so successful, we decided that we would do it 2 more times. So this is second of a third of a 3 series that Karen is convening of women leaders from around the world. In this case, that will be talking about new mindsets and how conscious leadership can generate the innovative actions and spirit that we all need to make the difference we all know we need to make. So thank you, Karen, for joining us. I turn the program over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Jim. That was a wonderful introduction. And good morning to everyone that is joining us, both live now and those of you that are going to be joining us as you listen to the recordings. I enjoyed very much after the panel on 8-1 going back into YouTube and watching because I was so busy thinking I wasn't listening as carefully as I wanted to be to the remarkable speakers that day, and going to YouTube and seeing all the comments that were beside it and all the different views. So I highly recommend that you tune back into the Humanity Rising panel. I want to say thank you very much to Jim and the whole Humanity Rising team for the leadership that you have provided in convening conversations about strategies, new mindsets, and effective solutions. The global network of mentors and change makers that you've brought together are remarkable. They have an opportunity, brought together conversations that don't happen necessarily in just everyday life. Today's focus is Mindsets for Change, Conscious Leaders Innovating for a Better Future. I will be introducing the panelists as they begin. I'm going to make some comments first, some opening comments, and then the panelists will have some time, and then we'll have a discussion about wisdom and how wisdom supports our leadership, how we cultivate our wisdom, and particularly the relationship of wisdom to conscious leadership. Well, before we end today, we're going to have a conversation about commitments. And I'll be inviting each of you in the chat to be formulating and bringing forward so that we can share your commitment. And I'll be reading some of those out. I look forward. That's always a favorite time of the panel. So innovative leaders seem to have an uncanny knack to sense into and respond to the emerging future. We all know that if we are simply responding to what we already know, we're repeating the past. But when we try to envision into the future, it can often be very difficult because we're constrained by the very thinking, by the knowing, by the experiences that got us where we are today. Excuse me. So when we instead know that we are part of a living system, that interconnected system that is, excuse me, that is all of life, it gives us a different kind of opportunity to tune into that emerging future, that which is blossoming, that which is growing, that which is still seed and is coming into readiness to bloom, to grow. And as we do that, we can intentionally disrupt certainty, our own and others, in service of lifting people up to think and act differently. Part of what we've seen in the horrific effects of COVID-19 and the policies and the decisions that have been made has been a real restriction in people's capacity to, in our capacity to deal effectively with COVID-19. And we don't know how to, but some of us believe that there were better ways to begin to handle that when the pandemic began. But we don't know overall how to solve the mess that we're in. The mess of the confluence of climate change, the pandemic, changing soil, changing earth, the kinds of wars that go on around the world, the poverty and the hunger. It's very difficult to try and figure our way out of this mess because there's so many interlocking parts. And it's easy to give up hope. And yet, today we're here to tend to a collective mindfulness, to come together for a shift in consciousness, to create a shared awareness out of which new commitments and coordinated action can emerge. And not only emerge, but be fueled by our collective intention, by our time here together. Robert Sternberg, Cambridge University Press, said, if there's anything the world needs, it is wisdom. And without it, I exaggerate not at all in saying that very soon there may be no world, or at least none with humans populating it. Robert Sternberg wrote that and published that in 2003. We're in the process of looking for wisdom and growing wisdom as part of being the conscious leaders that can actually shift the current extractive approach to the planet to one where humans nourish the planet, that in turn always naturally nourishes us, so that there's a regenerative ecosystem in our lives at home, in our organizations, our businesses, and in our government, and the kinds of policies that are brought together there at that leadership, at that level. So this is leadership together. And this is not an easy task, to be conscious together, to be co-leading, to be developing consciousness. And going forward, this really is a we journey. Because only by working together can we begin to change the design of the past on behalf of a new future. My hope today is that you will perceive new possibilities and envision what you can personally do by connecting with others in shared commitments. It's a good time to be gentle with ourselves and with others. These aren't the times to righteously hold on to our positions, even if we know we're right. And these are times of forgiveness, of holding our beliefs in gentle, loving ways, and releasing beliefs and mindsets that no longer serve us. These are times of love and wisdom, cultivating an inner landscape of love, an inner landscape that opens the possibilities for ourselves and for others, choosing love over fear by placing our attention on what works, on what nurtures, on what serves. And also cultivating a landscape or a field that we share, a collective field that we share of love. Again, choosing to create love between us over fear. So starting from the inside out, conscious leaders work with the invisible side of leadership to connect their being with their doing. This is working the inner landscape. And I first wrote about this in 1986. It was published in Transforming Leadership. And today's discussion will focus around three essential aspects of the invisible side of leadership: awareness, wisdom, and commitment. So as we move into awareness, before we take any step further, what I'd like to do is invite you all to join me in your own internal centering and awareness. So if you would, please find your feet on the floor if they're there. Feel what's holding you up in your chair, or feel the earth below your feet if you're standing. And find your interior place of center. Perhaps dropping down into the earth, giving thanks, stretching up into the heavens a bit, letting yourself open to listening, to knowing what you haven't known before, extending out side to side, allowing your natural breadth, your natural width to be here, and front to back, allowing your natural depth. Taking a breath to relax any tension that might be unnecessary. Opening your heart a bit, settling into your belly, and relaxing into your own center of awareness. And then taking a breath and coming back into the room that we're sharing here on Zoom and the connection that we've been growing together. By building awareness, it opens us to participate in an emerging future, to be open by being changed as the future emerges. And there is something bigger emerging. The birth of the future we create for ourselves, our neighbors, our planet, depends on our choices today as individuals and as the collective that we are. In this moment of enhanced clarity, we see how easily the actions of one affect the lives, the future for so many. So 3 aspects to skillful awareness that I want to cover today. One is conscious endings. What does it mean to say goodbye to that which needs to end? These can be practices in our own lives. These can be aspects to our business. What needs to end in order for us, for a new future to emerge? Endings ask a lot of our hearts and minds. And whether we're ready to change or not, endings wake us up. We usually react with limited knowledge and a certain desire to control because it puts us into uncertainty, into the unknown. It's easy to jump into blame, reaction, avoiding, freezing, resentment, or withdrawal, which give us a strange sort of certainty. But in those reactions, we get stuck in the past. What we can do now is use this time to think differently, to create new ways to live. We can see where we meet our instabilities or our insecurities and allow ourselves to sit in awareness. Take a breath, notice that instability or that insecurity. Wrap it in some arms of love and creatively see if perhaps there's a new way to respond. So I ask you to reflect for a minute. What are you called to let go of at this time that would allow a new future to emerge? Again, this could be personal. It could be around relationships. It could be around your business. It could be around an endeavor or initiative that you're involved in. A creative project. What is it that you're called to let go of, such that there's room for a new future to emerge? The second piece of skillful awareness that I want to bring up today is engaged renewal. And that kind of engaged renewal can only happen once we've completed the past, closed the door, allowed the decay to occur, allowed the ending to finish itself. And being aware then of that liminal place in between, that place where the new begins to emerge, but it's not yet fully formed. Noticing our inner state and our responses can allow us to be a participant in it. Yesterday, I saw a butterfly that had just emerged from the cocoon. And it was sitting there in the sun, just simply drying off, gaining a little bit of strength with each movement of its wings. When we come into that place where things have ended or are ending, on the other side of that is this engaged renewal, not a time to hurry, a time to sit and let the warmth of our attention, our awareness, begin to open us to the possibilities that are there. It's an inner gesture of welcoming disturbance that positions us to impact the old patterns and operate from a deeper place that allows us to source our own awareness and actions from future possibilities. This engaged renewal is often a time to also update our mindsets, our worldview or orientation when their usefulness has expired. It's time to identify and consciously strengthen mindsets that support our active participation in the emerging future. And we all get trapped in less productive mindsets. Even after my years of intense training and practice, I do. I get trapped in old ways, fixed ways of making sense of the world. And these are often unexamined beliefs that I have about myself and the world. The problem is they interfere with accomplishing and expressing what really matters to me. And I see the leaders and teams that I work with, consult with, and the executive coaching that I do the same. They're frustrated by their results and they don't understand what holds them back. And working together, they begin to understand how their inner frameworks direct the way they behave, and how the way they behave, of course, produces their results. So there's this marvelous equation of how our mindsets drive our behavior, which drives our results. And so if we want to change our results, we need to go back to the place on mindsets. I have a recent blog where I speak about how our mindsets shape our pattern of thinking and how the results of leaders' mindsets are magnified, particularly in times of change like this. The emerging future is just in front of us, just beyond us. It's something, as I said, the rational mind can't grasp it. And yet our task is to settle into a place of being, to listen more deeply than we ever have before, and at the same time take action as we care for the parts of ourselves and others who are not ready to change. and bring people along, listen for what is needed, and so that we can make use of the disturbances together. And this is the point where, as we begin now to come out into this emergent space of the future, where we can create that landscape of love. I'll be offering a webinar in October 24th, on the power and gifts of love, because it seems to me that there's nothing more important at this point than for us to discover a new relationship with love, because out of that relationship with love come the kind of innovations on behalf of a new future, where we're not just iterating on what we've already created, but we're actually innovating from the inside out into the kind of future that is going to work for more. I would like to turn the panel now over to Eliane, and I'd like you to introduce yourself, if you would, tell a little bit about your biography and how you came to be here, and then I'll turn it over to you to begin to speak.
Thank you. So my name is Eliane Valijro. I'm from Rwanda. I'm currently based in Canada near Montreal. I'm a professor of practice with McGill University in public-private partnerships, and I'm also the Deputy Executive Director for Global Open Data in Agriculture and Nutrition. So a lot of my work today focuses on the hundreds of millions of people who go hungry every day and the 2.8 billion people who are food insecure in the world. And how do we look at ways that this fourth industrial revolution that's allowing us to meet here virtually all over the planet, how can we allow this amazing technology that we have access to benefit the most marginalized in the world in ways that increase their capacity to feed themselves and to feed their families and their communities? So I'd like to start just by sharing some thoughts I've been having in this space. And what came to me this morning when I was preparing for this was the idea that Mother Earth was crying, asking us desperately to treat her with grace, to care for each other as brothers and sisters, to care for nature, to have reverence for nature, to co-create a new way forward where natural, social, and human capital can be valued in all we do, how we work, how we produce, how we teach, how we collaborate, and how we finance to build forward stronger in ways that encourage biodiversity thriving. The issues of awareness is something that I've really been thinking deeply about since the beginning of COVID. And so I would like to share with all of you a letter I wrote to COVID. Dear COVID-19, you are here to wake us up. Wake us up from our disconnection from nature. Wake us up from our disconnection from each other. Mother Earth weeps as she watches her rich biodiversity be depleted. As we whiz through our lives, our souls dragging behind our intensely scheduled lives, it is time for us, with much, to pause, to reflect, to give thanks to all those risking their lives every day for our food, our health, our electricity, our internet, all the basic services we, the lucky ones, take for granted. It is time to think of those who cannot self-isolate because they have no roof or are packed tight in prisons, in slums. It is time for us to pray for those who have no income, while we, in our stillness, can reflect, pause, and breathe in silence, not viruses. This idea of how do we look at wisdom, awareness, and commitment are really important to all the work I do. My big dream for the world is how do we co-create a world where all children grow up safe, loved, nurtured, with the capacity to become the most powerful creative selves they can each be. And what I know is that we live in a world with such deep suffering that it's difficult for all of us to hold. And part of the process that is needed is the capacity to breathe in the suffering, our personal suffering, the collective suffering around us, and the suffering of our ancestors, and to breathe out love and compassion, and to use this place of humility that we each have, of grace, to contribute to the world in ways that allow us to create in this place of emergence where we deal with constant uncertainty, but where we have hope in each other, in the capacity to support each other in ways we can all move forward. And I think it's also a time to connect deeply with the feminine, with the divine feminine in each of us, with the enlightened masculine that we each hold. And I just want to share these 4 energies or archetypes that Deepak Chopra has said it would be really important for us to be cultivating in this time. And these are compassion, power that I will call soul esteem, nature, wisdom, beauty, transformation and healing and care. And just to share with you, as I reflected on these archetypes, I also looked at the African deities that are related to each of these, and I would just want to share them briefly with you. So for compassion, the one I chose was Anastasia. And for soul esteem and power, cultivating our power, I chose Yemeya. And for nature, Inyanga or Gleti, another goddess. And for wisdom, Saraswati, Indian goddess, and Isis. For beauty, Oshun, cultivating the power of Oshun. For transformation and healing, Oya, cultivating Oya within each of us. And for care, Igala. And it's important for all of us to connect at this time with our ancestors, with everything they've lived through the realization that for us to be here today, many came before us to allow this space to come. And as we deal with this pandemic, this viral pandemic, we're also dealing with another one related to social justice. And just before I close, I just want to share something else I wrote recently. And yes, so let me just open it up for you. So the title is I Am Here. I'm here in this time, in this deep time, feeling the legacy of 400 years of inequality, breathing in centuries of pain and suffering, breathing out each prayer that was uttered through this time, breathing in each lash, each family separation, breathing out the hope our ancestors have placed in me. I am here in this time, in this deep time. I remember Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Jacob Blake. I remember all of you who have left us too soon because your skin was too beautiful for those who held hate and fear of your glory. I remember all who have lost a loved one through the dehumanization that racism continues to perpetuate. We carry you in our bodies and our bones. I hold your glory in my heart and soul with love. I'd like to thank Angel Acosta, who has been all summer conducting sessions around 400 years of inequality and reflection on how do we move forward with all of the suffering we hold in each other. And what is important to me is that as we breathe in the suffering, it's also important to breathe out the joy. And so as I am thankful for this opportunity I have to be connecting to each other, as I share with you what I hold in my heart, I also want to breathe out my joy and to bless and grace each of you so that all that you can bring to this world can be communicated in ways that will allow more light to come in these dark times and allow each of us to be contributors to this emerging future that we cannot yet see, but is so close. So may we collaborate, may we let go of our heroic selves and allow with humility co-creation in this collective distributed world where one consciousness is the way forward that will guide us. Thank you.
Oh goodness, you brought me to tears. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm deeply moved. I am here. You know, for each of us to wake each morning and say, I am here. I am here. And I am ready to collaborate, and I am ready to co-create. Yeah, I'm ready to join together on behalf of this world where all of the children are safe and all of the elders are cared for. Yeah. While I was speaking earlier, my daughter is staying with us this weekend with her 9-week-old baby. And they were a couple rooms away, but I could hear them in the background. And he was giggling and she was chatting with him. And I just thought, what a blessing. What a blessing that we're all here today. And may our work support and nurture them in their journey as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let me introduce a colleague of mine now that I've known for many, many years, Judy Neal. I'm so glad that you're here to join us today, Judy. And Judy's work on edgewalkers has spoken to me. Judy, I picked up the book again this week and was skimming some of it. And I thought, oh man, she just keeps naming me. It feels so good to be able to see me. Have somebody say, yeah, this is how I am. I like to walk between 2 worlds and 3 worlds and 4 worlds, as many as I can. So Judy, welcome this morning. Please introduce yourself and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And Eliane, thank you so much for your beautiful sharing and your reminding us of where we came from, as well as our contribution to the emerging future. I too am deeply touched, and I too share your vision of a world that works for the children. And now I'm an elder. I sure would like a world that cares for elders. But that just very, very powerful sharing. Thank you. And Karen, as I hear you talk about conscious leaders, it feels like you and I are saying and writing and living the same things. It's like we both got our feet in the same river and talking about leadership. We just use maybe slightly different words, but it's the exact same thing. I define edgewalkers as people who walk between worlds, and I primarily mean the spiritual world and the material world. But I started interviewing people, maybe 15 years ago or so, leaders who have a strong spiritual life and who are very effective in business. And when I was doing that, most people thought that was an oxymoron, that having a strong spiritual life meant you were withdrawing from the world, that maybe you were even airy-fairy, that it was spirituality and faith and religion just were not practical. And I kept meeting people for whom it was the most practical thing, and I just wanted to learn from them. And so what I learned was that they not only could walk between the material world and the spiritual world, but they also could walk between the world of manufacturing and the world of design, or the world of human resources and the world of information technology, or the world of the United States and the world of Africa. There's just all these different ways that, as Karen, you just said, all the different worlds that we can walk between. What I found is that they have a very deep grounding, a way of just really being centered in the world that helps them to not only handle change, but move towards and create change. Edgewalkers love change. I joke that they eat change for breakfast, and that they have a way of seeing, and Eliane, you talked about that, seeing, but not it's like sensing, but you can't actually see the details of it, but you know something's emerging. That's such an edgewalker statement. And edgewalkers tend to be on the edge of a system, not in the center. That change happens from the edges, and the center is for stability and for not changing. Often in unhealthy organizations, and I'm afraid many organizations are very unhealthy, the center is holding on to power. They're no longer holding on to the original founding vision, they're holding on to power, and they resist change. And so edgewalkers have a foot in the system, but a foot in other systems too. And so they can bring information from the outside and help the organization be more innovative and responsive to what's going on in the environment. So I wanted to tell you a story, and I just added this. There's a couple of stories I want to tell you, but I just added this because of what Eliane said about nature and being one with nature. And I was a student at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, and some days I just needed a break. And right across the street was Sleeping Giant Park, where the Sleeping Giant Mountain was. And you could hike to the top of the mountain in about an hour. And so one day I did that, a beautiful day. And at the top of the mountain was this large rock. And I decided to just lay on the rock and feel the solidness of the earth. And I felt like I was embraced by the rock. I thought it would be cold and hard, but instead it was warm and soft and like just the most wonderful embrace from Mother Earth. And I sat up and I looked around and I saw the wind moving through the trees very gently. And it was like the earth was breathing. And I started to breathe with the earth and feel this oneness with the earth. And it was the most moving connection and experience. And as I started back down the mountain, it's like I heard this voice and it said, business leaders need to have this kind of experience. If they do, they'll make different decisions. Because once you've had this oneness with Mother Earth and you've learned to love Mother Earth, you have to take care of what you love. So a couple of people that got me into really talking to business leaders, and one of them was Tammy Simon. And many of you probably know her as being the CEO of Sounds True. And the company is founded to preserve spiritual wisdom. And Tammy she was an amazing person to interview. So I started, in fact, she was the first person I interviewed for when I decided to study spiritual leaders and write edgewalkers. And I asked her, how do you walk between worlds and how do you have a foot in the material world and the spiritual world? She said to me, "You're interviewing the wrong person. I can't help you." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because there isn't two worlds. There's only one." And in that moment, her saying that shifted the way I see reality. It was very powerful. And so she did agree to be interviewed, and I asked her different things about how she made business decisions. And one of them was when they do profit sharing in the company. And she said, "What I do for profit sharing is I give and I give and I give until I want to throw up." She said, "I tune into my body, and when my body feels nauseated, then I stop." And that's a real incredible self-awareness. And I haven't ever heard anybody else talk about profit sharing quite that way. And then product development. She asks her team to tune into their intuition and to look at their sense of what's emerging. And she studies actually with a shamanic kind of person who taught her to read the signs. So that it's a very intuitive way of being and leading that's been incredibly effective. They have moments of silence in the company where the company has, at a random time, a bell is rung. And if you care to, you can stop and just be silent and take a moment of silence. and get centered and then get back to work. So those are just a few of the examples of edgewalkers, and I wanted to, I've got more and lots more to say if anybody would like to ask questions, but I want to share this quote from Mary Oliver that I think fits our conversation. She says, "No one has yet made a list of places where the extraordinary may happen and where it may not. Still, there are indications among crowds, in drawing rooms, among easements and comforts and pleasures. It is seldom seen. It likes the out of doors. It likes the concentrating mind. It likes solitude. It is more likely to stick to the risk taker than the ticket taker. It isn't that it would disparage comforts or the set routines of the world, but that its concern is directed to another place. Its concern is directed to the edge and the making a form out of the formlessness that is beyond the edge." Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Reaching out. Say that last line again, would you?
Its concern is the edge and the making of a form out of the formlessness that is beyond the edge.
Making a form out of the formlessness that is beyond the edge. Yes. Yeah.
I'll put this in the chat.
Please do. Please do. Please do. It's a wonderful, vital chat going on up here. Lots of positive responses. So Judy, thank you again and again for reminding us that to be on the edge of a system is where my friend Alan Briskin talks about the frothy edges and the creativity that occurs at those frothy edges. And that we actually, it's not just that we're weird, it's not just that we're edgy, it's not just that we're risk takers, but actually we develop capacity over our lives to walk in that edge, on that edge, to speak from the edge so that others can hear without losing the edginess, right, without losing that constant stream of new information.
Yeah, it's our role in the world to not fit in. And it's a very uncomfortable role, but it's a calling and it's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I started Edgewalkers International is because often people feel so alone and they mm-hmm. question their own sanity. Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of rewards,
yeah,
but it's a calling. And so to know that we're not the only ones, like you said, when you found yourself in my book, it's like if people can see that being an edgewalker is a thing and it's an important thing, it's mm-hmm. necessary. Mm-hmm. I just really mm-hmm. think.
And one of the, in the chat, there's a, actually Anita put the Mary Oliver quote. She put a link for you. So she took care of that. But there's one person in the chat was speaking about how it can be lonely being out there on the edge. And I was reflecting on how glad I am that Humanity Rising has given us an opportunity to be out on the edge together today.
Yes, yes.
And there are many networks. So thank you, Judy. Thank you very much. I'd like to turn, well, a very rich morning here, afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. I'd like to turn this over next to Anastasia. Dr. Anastasia, thank you for letting me know that you had in fact finished your PhD. I didn't realize that. I knew that you were working with women entrepreneurs and gathering and bringing together information from women entrepreneurs. So Anastasia, I'll turn this time over to you now, if I may.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good evening, everyone. So in South Africa, it's 6 p.m. Yeah, so it's getting darker. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be part of the panel and talk about leadership, an issue that is of importance everywhere in the world, considering the times that we find ourselves in. So I am based in South Africa. I work at the Gordon Institute of Business Science. So I teach in the area of entrepreneurship, applied research design, and I also conduct research. So as Karen mentioned, so we conducted a research study on women entrepreneurs in Botswana. And I was also involved in a big research project in Africa where we were trying to interview leaders and try to understand what are some of the leadership capabilities that are required to survive in our kind of context. As you know, Africa is identified as an environment with institutional voids, resource scarcity, and lots of uncertainties. So we were questioning the notion of how do leaders survive and how do they lead their organization. So we gathered data from more than 100 leaders, and I think that was the biggest project that our school was engaged in, where we had amazing insights. We got good feedback. And I think building on to what Judy was saying, in our context, we didn't know that managers are actually relying on spirituality. So when we went out there to collect data, we just went with our, management lenses and thinking we're going to find the new theories, but we were quite surprised to realize that leaders in our context are relying more on spirituality. So they are using that as an anchor to guide them in the uncertain business environment that they find themselves in. And some they actually use faith as a form of institution to guide their behavior. And as we know, in an environment of institutional voids, there will be lots of irregularities that take place. But these leaders, they actually use their spirituality to guide their actions. So this morning, when I was thinking about today's session, what came to my mind was the notion of going back to the heart of leadership. And I think Marlene mentioned that, she said that we need to be engaging from a heart perspective, from head to heart. So considering the challenges that we're going through in the world, COVID-19 affecting each and every one of us, so the most important thing that came to my mind is the notion of the heart of leadership. And when I look at leadership, I think about the role that a heart plays in a human body. So I'm not going to be trying to bring up new theories, but I would really like to be very practical in terms of the role and the functioning of the heart. Because I understand, or in situations where there are lots of uncertainties, we need to go back to the basics. So I'll be using the basic functions of the heart to articulate how we need to move on as leaders. When we look at the heart's role is to pump blood to the rest of the body. So the heart symbolizes life. So for me, at the heart of conscious leaders, at the heart of our leaders who are aware, so there is life. So to me, leaders embody life at an individual level, at a community level, at a societal level, and also at a global level. So without conscious leaders, so there is no life. So without leadership, there is no life. And I think that's why sometimes we find ourselves in the challenges that we are in, because we're questioning the role of leadership in terms of bringing the life for us to move on. And when we look at the heart, at the heartbeat, it ensures that there is a circulation in the entire body. So is leadership. So leadership is about being responsible for a group of people, or being responsible for a community, and ensuring that all of them, each and every one, or each and every person in the ecosystem receives this blood. Each and every person in the ecosystem is counted in. So at the heart of leadership, there is a heartbeat. There must be an authentic action. There must be an authentic response to the call, because there's so many people out there who are crying, so many people out there who are hurting. And leadership is that response to the hurt, is that response to the sufferings of people out there. And when the heart beats, it distributes oxygenated blood where it is needed. And when I think about our communities, I mean, in Africa, we have so many disadvantaged communities, and that is where oxygen is not reaching. So that is where you see resources are not reaching. But as leaders, we need to ensure that there is a continuous circulation in the entire body. And also taking out the deoxygenated body, taking out the old way of doing things. And I think Karen touched on that. She spoke about we need to let go of the old things. In my own understanding, deoxygenated blood is not good for the body because it is not giving life. So I think leadership is about being aware of the things in the system that needs to go. And how can we revitalize those things and make them usable to the areas that are actually needed? How do we take the resources that we have and ensure that those resources are not just there, but they actually bring about results? And if we are not able to take out the old things, I mean, if we put new wine in an old wineskin, we're going to lose the new wine. So we need to take out the old system so that we can embrace the new things. And what I love about the heart is that it looks at it feels the things that are happening around. If there needs to be a change, or if there are things that are threatening to the human body, the heart will change its beat because it wants to make sure that the body adjusts to the new system. And I think that is the heart of leadership, ability to change with changing times and being dynamic and to respond, at the time of need, to respond when people are actually in need, not minutes after events happened. Because if you respond after events have happened, there will not be any benefit. But we need people who will respond when needs arise, when people are in serious challenges. We need leaders who are agile. And I think this brings in the notion of innovativeness, that what we know, I think, even from academia, is that innovation is way ahead of what we prescribe as our models in academia, because there will be issues or challenges in the macroeconomic environment, and people will come up with new ways of doing things. So it is very important that leaders will know when to respond. As there are changes in the environment that we are in, then they must respond on time. And another important thing, which is a theme of today, that my previous colleague spoke about, is the notion of interconnectedness. So the heart does not function on its own. The heartbeat does not function on its own, but it is interconnected with other systems. So without the other systems, so there will not be life. So I think the new way in which we need to embrace leadership is the notion of partnerships, the notion of collaborative efforts. And I think Judy touched on it, that we all share the same energy. So the notion that on my own, I will not be able to do it. I need other people to partner and to work together. And when you have brought people in, you need to be able to listen to those people. When we look at the word heart, there's actually ear. So it's H-E-A-R-T, and there's E-A-R, and that means ear. So at the heart, of leadership, So it's listening, ability to hear people out in the collaborative partnerships, because these partnerships will not be effective if we are not able to listen and take actions. And as the heart supplies, the blood to the rest of the body, it also has its own vessels that supports it. And I think this is very important, because a lot of time as leaders, we forget about our own selves. So how can you help other people if you are still hurting? So although the heart or the heartbeat has got this massive, role that it plays in the body, but it also acknowledges that it has got its own vessels that needs to support it. So as a leader, you need to be aware of your own challenges that you're going through, so that you'll be able to offer yourself to other people. And I think our late former president, Nelson Mandela, once said that a good heart and a good head are always a formidable combination. So for me, it's going back to leading by the heart, listening to people. And in closing, I'll just share about one experience that I had at the Academy of Management last year when I attended the conference. So I was part of Management, Spirituality, and Religion Interest Group. So at the conference, I experienced so much love, so much togetherness, that it reminded me of the principle that we share at home, which talks about Ubuntu. Ubuntu simply means that I am because we are. It's just being human. And Bishop Desmond Tutu, one of our Nobel Prize winners, he said that my humanity is bound in yours, for we can only be human together. So acknowledging that as we are embarking into this new world of being very innovative and creating and thinking about the new ways of doing things, we need to do all of that together, and acknowledging that we need to have respectful engagement, sharing vulnerabilities, being very vulnerable, showing care, deriving solution together, and also having opportunities for self-reflections. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. Nourishing the heart of leadership. Nourishing the heart of leadership. Really, that whole image of listening, of hearing, of taking action and responding from that place, so that you're responding before the needs are so great. So that you're responding, you're responsive, you're able to be in connection with the community that you serve, and the oxygen I love the image of the oxygen being available. They say that love is the oxygen of the soul, of the whole body, of the whole life, of our capacity to be here together. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over next to Maria Kingry. And Maria, if you would like to turn your video on and briefly introduce yourself. Welcome today. I'm glad you're with us.
Thank you so much, Karen. I am so honored to be here today, and I apologize. I've got a little mess in the background. On vacation, actually. It's a holiday here in the US, and so I had to find a quiet space. And I'm so glad that I did, because I have the opportunity to be here and learn, first of all, from the wisdom of those who have spoken before me. And I'm so moved by what I've heard so far. Karen, you talking about leading with love, and Eliane talking about COVID, her poem and what's possible. Judy, that the goal is not to fit in was really like sent off something in me, because I realized I've been spending my life trying to fit in. And then Anastasia, your analogy about the heart and how it embodies the essence of leadership is something that I will go back to and study again. So I'm just, again, deeply honored to be here with you all and to be included in this conversation. I am co-founder of an organization called Southern Energy Management. We were very, very early in the solar industry here in the United States. And so this concept of letting go of what has been in the past and embracing what is wanting to be born is something that is intimately familiar with to me, because of course, our power system and the way that we make and use energy is deeply embedded into all of our ways of living, of doing business. And so having an awareness of what it will take to change, to evolve from what has been and what's waiting to emerge and what can be is, again, something that I've spent the better parts of 2 decades thinking about. And we call the solar industry the solar coaster, because it's up and down, and it frequently there are lots of changes that we have to be watching out for constantly, because of here in the United States and most places around the world, actually. Our industry is very dependent on policies and the fluctuations in the markets of other sources of energy. And so we have to constantly be watching with a sense of awareness for what is coming, and not just an awareness of where we are now and not necessarily where we want to go, but we have to have this awareness of all of the different aspects that are going to affect what we do for a living. For me, the heart of leadership in this industry, as you guys have all intimated, is really about people. And when my husband is my business partner, and so this has been, I've always said that SEM, Southern Energy Management, is a labor of love. When we started our business, it was really about helping to make the world a better place for our son. And as we developed our business and as it grew, in the early days, there was a lot of passion and everybody was really excited and couldn't wait to come to work, and we were changing the world, and it was just so exciting. And then reality set in, and in very, very different ways. We grew to a point that we realized what we had done as an organization, all the ways that we worked together, again, very collaboratively and sort of on the fly, it didn't work anymore. And so we ran into some very serious challenges growing our business. And for me, the most difficult part of that was not that Bob and I, who were the entrepreneurs and put everything in our life savings and are really, truly our hearts and souls and our relationship on the line to help to move clean energy forward. What was most difficult for me was the people that had grown up through the organization with us and what was going to happen to them. And I realized in sort of a moment of crisis, when our business was facing really, honestly, an existential threat, that I hadn't asked myself a very important question for a long time, which I believe that entrepreneurs and all of us as leaders need to ask. And that was, what do I really want? What is it that I'm really trying to create in the world? And what I realized was that building large solar farms and getting competitive, and getting down to the last cent of how we could install solar cheaper was not at the heart of what we were doing. What we were doing was building the organization that we wanted to work for and with. And we were a certified B Corporation. We were one of the first, I think, 200 certified B corporations in the world. So we had already had this ethos of we want to know that we're being sustainable in our company, not just say that we were. And again, in this whole idea of being responsive and letting go of what has to be let go of in order to let be born what wants to be born, we decided to sell the largest part of our business. Was doing large projects, and it was what we decided was that that part of our business was not in alignment with the core values that we held as an organization and that we wanted to embody. Like, we wanted to build a great team and not just a team that made more money or that installed more megawatts. In order to play in that world, we had to go against our hearts, and in many ways, just to remain competitive, because it's a very, very competitive environment. And so we made the very difficult decision to let that part go and acknowledge and understand that we were going to be a much smaller company, that our growth prospects were going to be much smaller than they would have been if we had stayed in that other line of business. But what we wanted to do is build a great company. And we wanted to build a great company for our people and for ourselves. And so I'm a firm believer that entrepreneurs have the power to change the world. I believe, and I'm really excited, Anastasia, to know you now and to be aware of your work, and Judy and everyone, because I do believe that there's a shift. And traditionally, being in business has been about more, and making more money and, you know, returning value for shareholders. And with B corporations and others, we're seeing a shift to thinking of how to use business as a force for good in the world, which is so exciting to see. And I'm so grateful to be a part of that. So about 5 years ago, after we had gone through our little dip on the roller coaster and come out of the other side with a much smaller team, but much more resilient team, we went about looking for a system, a way to embed our values and our purpose, and a way of managing our organization that we wouldn't make the same mistakes that we did, because that's the core of wisdom and leadership, isn't it? Not making the same mistakes. And so we found something called the entrepreneurial operating system and began to embed that into our organization. And it transformed our organization to the point that one of the questions that I pondered before this morning's session was, you know, what has been some of my greatest successes or things that I've experienced myself that I would like to share. And I really believe it was walking away. Like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I decided that I no longer was needed in my organization day to day, because we had embedded a system. Again, it was very intentional, and it's, you know, has lots of different components. But what was beautiful about it was because we had used this system to intentionally bring everybody in the organization along. Everybody in the organization's voice could be heard. I knew that our values, and that between B Corp and the measurement that we had there, and the measurement that we had with our people, who, by the way, chose how they wanted to be measured, what success looked like for them within the context of the broader organization that we were building, which I believe that is really a metaphor for what the future needs to be about, is all of us need to have our own interests in heart, at the same time seeing ourselves as part of something much larger. So I fell in love with it, and I wanted to, since I was no longer needed in my business, I decided that I would go out and help other organizations to embed this system. And now with COVID, one of the greatest pleasures and things that I'm most grateful for is that many of my clients said, you know, it was still hard, but because we had process and systems and we had these things in place that allowed us to be responsive and to be resilient, we didn't have to think about the core of how we were going to run our business. We just had to think about how we were going to respond and do things differently. That was really, really meaningful. And the last thing I want to share is Francis Fry has written a book that I highly recommend called Unleashed, and it's about the unapologetic leader's guide to empowering others, which I just, unapologetic, I could talk all day about that, but she talks about you need three things. Trust is built on empathy, authenticity, and logic. And you have to have all three of those. And if you wobble in any of them, that you're not going to be able to build real trust with your team. And one quote that I really love of hers is that leadership at its core is about making other people better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you very much. And your real life story of having taken a business and actually turned it into something that is making a difference in so many people's lives. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. They're asking for the exact title of the book in the chat when you have a chance. You know, I started my business, my consulting business 40 years ago, and I've worked with leaders in every type of industry, from the multinational to corporate, smaller businesses, to nonprofits, to government systems, large government systems, to law firms, to all different types of businesses and organizations, and helping to develop leaders and their capacity to both commune with the core. That's why I started my company's name is Communicore. Commune with the core, and it really ties in with what both Anastasia and Maria were saying about the leaders who make the difference have that capacity to cultivate and bring forward that their relationship with spirit and their relationship with a certain wisdom that allows them to be beyond their knowledge. Wisdom allows us to know that knowledge is fallible and limited. And wisdom allows us to simultaneously know and doubt. It's a blend of emotional and cognitive, empathic and clear perception. Wisdom allows that larger perception so that we can engage with the world from that place. We are running just a little later than I had thought, but that's fine because it's all been so rich. It's been wonderful. So let's see, I'd like to see if we can do this part sort of quickly, but it's an important key part of the conversation. The question that I ask and always love to ask, and perhaps we can show, if everybody would start your video, let's come on and be all on together. We can that way have an opportunity to all just really speak and respond. The question I'm asking is, how does your wisdom inform your leadership? And really that's what I'm always looking for with every leader that I work with. There's competency, there's experience, there's what we know, but there's this deeper wisdom. And this is a question that you could each speak on for 10 minutes or more. But just briefly, what is one way that you link your wisdom with your leadership? Judy, would you start? And then I'll turn it over to each of you.
Thank you, Karen. That's such a powerful question. I think one way I link my wisdom with my leadership is to know that nature provides wisdom. And so to, when possible, be in nature with deep questions, provocative questions or decisions, and to receive guidance, ideally to go on some kind of vision quest, but you can do a vision quest in 5 minutes. And you can do a vision quest with an image from nature, a photograph or something on the internet. But to align and tune into the energy of nature or of source to get wisdom, whether it comes from inside of me or from something greater. And I believe it comes from a combination, but to do that tuning in.
Beautiful. Thank you, Judy. Thank you. And Eliane? would you like to go next? You can all unmute if it's quiet behind you, and then we'll just be ready to be in more of a discussion mode here. Please go ahead.
Yes, so being from Rwanda, a place where genocide occurred, we're a country that carries a lot of trauma. And one of the things in my journey that I learned is that trauma eliminates common sense. And so my journey is how to reclaim common sense, how to bring a beginner's mind aligned with purpose to co-create an emerging future with others, knowing that I only bring a small part.
Thank you very much. I led a women's retreat in Switzerland in 2004. And I don't know if you know Asha Hagi Elmi, but she was one of the participants. She was from Rwanda. And her stories changed my life, changed the trajectory of my work. Thank you. Maria, how does your wisdom inform your leadership?
Well, first, I'm humbled to think that I have gained some wisdom. I think that I try my best to stay curious and to remember that I don't have all the answers and that that's okay. And one of my favorite things that I like to say to the teams that I work with is none of us is as smart as all of us. So by creating space for what wants to emerge in groups is really where I've gained the most wisdom.
Thank you, Maria. And Anastasia, you're on mute.
Yeah, I heard that this is the most popular phrase.
It is indeed.
You are on mute. Okay, yes. So I think for me, the way my wisdom informs my leadership is to sometimes go against the norm. What we know is this is how the leader, should portray him or herself. So the notion of being vulnerable as a leader, and I think that is very important because I realize that as a leader, I don't have to always show the strong me, but I can be vulnerable. And I think this is the new way that people would like to connect with me because it doesn't show the sign of weakness. So although we know a lot of times being vulnerable is associated with weakness, but for me, it is a sign of courage. So you give people an opportunity to feel like they belong. So it relaxes the systems that are there, and people will be free to innovate. And obviously, when you are vulnerable, that means you are authentic to yourself. So you need to be authentic so that those who are around you can be drawn by your authenticity to themselves. So I think for me, is the notion of using vulnerability as I lead.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. There's much to learn about wisdom. And unless we notice wisdom in our own lives and in our own experience, we can't grow it, we can't amplify it. So I encourage everyone to take a stand for wisdom and to appreciate your own wisdom and appreciate the wisdom of those around you. To conclude this panel, I'd like to ask you each, if you would, to briefly state, as you're coming forward from the richness that was shared today, what is your commitment going forward? And for those of you that are listening, would you write in the panel, in the chat, what is your commitment as you're going forward today? What is it that you're committed to? What is at the core? And we'll need to keep this fairly brief, but I don't want to end without it. So please, Judy, do you want to go ahead again? I see you're unmuted.
Oh, okay, I'd love to. Thank you. My commitment is to convene a group of people that includes you, Karen, because you've already signed up, to explore creating global consciousness as a field of study. And I will listen.
Thank you, Judy. Maria?
My commitment is I've been inspired to examine my own wisdom and the wisdom of those that I partner with.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Eliane?
So I'm committed to growing regenerative agriculture for the world so we can feed the world in ways that ensure there is no hunger, no poverty, and that biodiversity thrives. And so that wisdom engages how we feed ourselves and respect nature.
Oh, thank you. Anastasia, I'll give you a minute to catch up. What the question I asked is, what's the commitment? Yeah, I know your video went out for a minute. That happens to all of us now. What is your commitment going forward? But let me read a few from the chat now. To be committed to listen and feel connected to my core self. I commit to being receptive and kind and alive. I can commit to continuing to speak for nature and facilitate connections with nature. I commit to manifesting my book on healing through the arts. I commit to help humanity reclaim their true divine nature and live from the heart. I commit to tune in, to follow nature's sources, guidance, and help others to do the same. I commit to step into leadership. I commit to bring millions of people together to meditate on the same daily intention to measurably heal the planet and create a new future for the world. I commit to building a world where no one dies due to neglect or malice. Wow. I commit to reawakening respect for the elder's voice. I commit to deeper listening and speaking out. I commit to releasing my need to see the change I would like to see in educational leadership. Oh my goodness, they're just beautiful. They're just pouring in. I commit to walking the edge. I commit to triggering an inquiry about wisdom. Please do, please do, please do. I wish I had time to read them all. Every leader I work with, I encourage them to put wisdom on their performance review, because we want our leaders to be wise, and yet nobody's measuring it. Nobody's encouraging it. Nobody's providing trainings to cultivate it. And so, Anastasia, what is your commitment going forward from today? Just briefly.
Yeah. My commitment is to be an empathetic leader.
Thank you. Thank you. And I commit going forward to continue to see the wisdom in each of you, to bring your wisdom forward, to encourage it, to illuminate it, to amplify it, to give it life, give it voice, and to say, yes, 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 go, 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 go. And encourage you to step past any boundaries you think are there to bring your leadership forward. A leader is simply somebody who has the willingness and ability to act on that which matters the most to them, small or large. Leadership is very simple. It's taking that action. So thank you all for this time today. The panel has been rich. I'm deeply moved. I look forward to going back and listening. I will put the YouTube up on my headphones as I go for a walk with the dog later today, and just drink in the depth of what each of you have shared. And thank you to all of you who are participating, those of you who we've known for so many years, and many of you who are new to many of us. We look forward to connecting with you again real soon. And I'll turn it over to you, Jim.
Well, Karen, you produced another masterpiece. Thank you. This has been very illuminating and very profound. And I love the way you brought to a closure, first with the question of wisdom, and second with the question of what our commitment is. What's the action that comes out of our contemplations today? I'd like to just make one small comment on wisdom. And I think it came out of what you said, Judy, in your response, that the earth knows, nature knows. And I think it's worth us just reflecting for a moment on the earth as opposed to human subjectivity as the cornerstone of what wisdom needs to mean move forward. if you think about wisdom and the wisdom traditions, there's been religious traditions, there's spiritual traditions, philosophical traditions of all kinds. They've been largely just human constructs. And they've brought us to the precipice of catastrophe. Human beings on their own are not capable of being truly wise. I would like to submit that for everyone's contemplation. Human beings on their own are not capable of being wise. It's only in connection with the earth. It's only in connection with the larger eco field. It's only by engaging in biomimicry that I think under current world circumstances, wisdom needs to begin. And I know you all have said it in different ways today, and I just wanted to tease it out that we're at one of those extraordinary moments where the wisdom of the past is no longer sufficient on its own to illumine the pathway forward. And it's only by understanding that nature knows, the mother knows, the mother earth that produced us knows. And our task in this moment as her children is to remember and to align and to attune. And so anyway, I just thought I would just add that thought for people's contemplation. And then I'd like to end with a heart coherence meditation that we've been doing every day since we resumed on September 1. Since May 20, probably the most consistent theme that has emerged from our deliberations together is the importance of heart coherence, the importance of just engaging in some instrumentality that brings coherence internally so that we can navigate a completely incoherent, out of control external world. So we've been practicing heart coherence. So I'd like to take 1 minute and just ask everyone to sit comfortably and maybe put your hand over your heart. And in the next 60 seconds, try to just listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude that we are all alive, all of our hearts are beating, and that the earth that created us loves us. Take 1 minute. Listen to your heart. And if you can, just connect your beat with the heartbeat of everyone. Thank you, everyone. We're taking tomorrow off. On Monday, the 7th of September, we're going to hear about the creation of a Humanity Rising local group in the Netherlands. And we're also going to be celebrating a Humanity Rising group that's emerging out of Chile. And so as humanity continues to move forward as we've committed to with the pandemic, we're going to go as long as the pandemic goes. We're just going to be bringing every day, 5 days a week, between 5 o'clock and 6:30 p.m. Central European Time, initiatives, sharings, deliberations that have to do with how we use the crisis of the pandemic, opportunity for human renewal. And Karen, I really want to deeply thank you for bringing wisdom. Maria, Anastasia, Eliane, Judy, you've been brilliant, you've been profound, and you've been very soft. So thank you. See you all again on Monday, everyone. Bye for now.